Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. In this episode, Kasi Lemmons takes us behind the scenes of her new thriller, Harriet. The film tells the extraordinary true story of Harriet Tubman, a slave who escaped her captors. After finding liberty in the North, Tubman then risked her freedom and her life to return to the South, and relied upon her courage, ingenuity, and tenacity to free hundreds of others and change the course of history. In addition to Harriet, Ms. Lemmons' directorial credits include the feature films Eve's Bayou, The Caveman's Valentine, Talk to Me, Black Nativity, and episodes of the series Shots Fired and Luke Cage. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Ms. Lemmons spoke with director Rick Famuyiwa about filming Harriet. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Good evening. I know you guys enjoyed that because Casey's work on this film was incredible. I've seen it twice. I saw it at the premiere, and I said I got to take my kids to see this movie because just to see Harriet come alive in this way was important. And so congratulations on a great film. And I guess we're just gonna talk and hang and shoot the shit about Harriet and the process and everything else. So first, as always, I'm always curious about origin stories. So where did this come from in terms of you telling this story? What was there? I guess I'll just let it come from you just to get what the beginning of this was for you.
Well, for me, in some ways, it was a different process than anything I've been involved with before, in that I got invited onto it. Okay. They were very determined two producers that were very determined to make the movie, two women producers, Deborah Martin Chase and Daniela Toplin-Lumberg. And they had a script that they knew they wanted somebody to come in and wrangle it and bring a vision, and because the script had been written decades before. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting, is that Gregory Allen Howard had written the script in the 90s. Yeah. And his vision was Harriet Tubman as a superhero. But it was really before three major biographies on Harriet had been written. So he didn't have access. And I also think in the 90s, it wasn't as important as it is now to get stuff right. Mm-hmm. So it was a little general, and it was not her story as much as it needed to be. So they brought me on, and the first thing I did was research. Yeah. And I did 7 months of research, and I read everything, every biography and every academic paper and everything on the Underground Railroad, and really tried to find what was her story. And I didn't know if these things were going to go together well. But as it turns out, the action adventure story was inherent to her story. Yeah, exactly. And so the detail and texture and the womanhood and what was specific that I found exciting that I didn't know about Harriet, that wasn't, necessarily in his script, and that wasn't what children are taught or what young adults are taught about Harriet. Those are things that I found really interesting, Yeah.
It was when I went to the first screening of it, you had mentioned that notion of Harriet Tubman as a superhero, and sort of the idea of how that shaped the story. So just talk a little bit about that concept and how, if any, that drove the storytelling, because obviously you think of a superhero film or you think of that genre, there's certain things that you sort of, immediately associate that you might not think of when you're thinking of Harriet Tubman. But once you said it, I said, there's something about that makes sense.
The beauty of it was when I went into the research, it didn't drive the storytelling.
Yeah.
It was inherent in the story. Yeah. You know what I mean? This is an action adventure story. I mean, it just is. There's jeopardy, there are high stakes, it's life and death. You know what I mean? So the interesting thing for me was that it didn't have to be imposed or artificial. Yeah. It was kind of there in the story. So really what I was trying to bring was, this woman. Yeah. That's what I was trying to bring. I was trying to bring you as if you had lunch with her. Like, how close can you get to the woman who is doing these incredible things? And within, a form that's interesting and engaging.
Did you have any sense of, because, there have been several stories that have been written and told in this era and about slavery or about, whether it's a specific historical figure or a fictionalized version. This is, there's been some films and television that have sort of dealt with this. So how much in your mind were you thinking about what's preceded this, and how much either through that notion or others were you thinking about how to sort of tell this or redefine this in a different way?
Well, what I knew was that we'd had very good representations of physical violence against enslaved people. Mm-hmm. That has been done very well. And so I was not trying to necessarily give you that again, because I thought that in a weird way, it can be dehumanizing. Yeah. In a weird way, it can be, I didn't want to give you slavery porn, I wanted to give you what I found incredibly heartbreaking. And that was the choices that people had to make every day and the separation that people had to deal with every day in terms of their families. Yeah, exactly. So a lot has been written and filmed about the damage, for instance, to men's bodies or to black bodies. But I feel like what did it do to your psyche to watch your sisters being, I know I love my family. We all love our family. So that's the thing. Once I realized that this is a family story, I thought that was really powerful and really accessible. Like, we can all relate to that. And what does it do to you when you have to leave your wife right after she had a baby to, because you're going to be sold, or the real story of her sister, Rachel, who wouldn't leave her children, and all the reasons why people didn't run. I mean, I think there's kind of some kind of stupid conjecture out there about, people would have run, if they chose slavery or whatever. People had many, many reasons. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that the slave masters were so eager to have the enslaved people procreate was because that was a way of controlling them. Because people, you couldn't run with your kids. You couldn't, so what did those choices feel like? So I really wanted to investigate a different type of violence, exactly. Than I'd seen before.
Yeah, no, it's I think this was, obviously it's the 400 year anniversary since the first slaves arrived, and there was an incredible piece that the New York Times did, and you sort of start thinking about the ideas of slavery very differently, and what the effects were, and what the sort of reality was. And what I was struck by watching the film was how you were able to sort of deal with the different layers of slavery that were different than what we were sort of used to seeing. Right. When, the scene between her and her husband when she comes back for him, and then she finds out that he's remarried, and just the complications that went into just living life because one of them was free and one of them was not. Exactly. And so there were so many different layers to that. I thought that those relationships were really strong, particularly between Harriet and I'm forgetting the character played by Janelle Monáe. They had such because that also brought sort of a different layer of understanding between how even black people and black sort of related to each other. So I guess talk a little bit about some of those nuances, particularly when, with that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was trying to speak to. I was trying to speak to all of the texture of African-American life, and life, in fact, of the period. So you would get a complete kind of different view of it, because there's something, like I say, look, I appreciate all those movies that have gone before, but there's something a little bit, I find it slightly dehumanizing, like slaves in the field picking cotton, as if that was slavery, because slavery is a very complex economy that involved many, many different aspects. And this particular group of enslaved people in the Chesapeake region that were living next to and intermarrying free people, I found that fascinating and painful. What are the choices you have to make? How much do you have to love a woman to marry an enslaved woman as a free man? So historians sometimes diminish John and his love for Harriet, but he must have loved her at least at one point in order to marry somebody knowing that their children would be enslaved. You know what I mean? So these sacrifices that people made and what they did for love, and I've got to say, we shot in Virginia in a farm where there'd once been numerous enslaved people, and you could feel it. It was quiet. There was no freeway noise. And you would just hear insects and like nature. And it was like church in a really weird way, because it was not just filled with pain. It felt, you could feel the lives of people. These are lives. People lived and loved and had children, who they might have had hope for, So I wanted to bring out their humanity, and in the story of enslaved people, there's love and family, and so the Harriet Tubman story is full of this love of family. And I thought, okay, so everybody can relate to this. This is like our family. This is what wouldn't you do for your family, And I found that very inspiring. So it's a painful story. I mean, it's a painful story, but inspiring, very inspiring.
Yeah, definitely. So talk to me about casting and the incredible Cynthia Erivo. What was that process? Was she someone that was on your mind, on your radar?
She was somebody that was on the producer's mind. So, and I was a little skeptical. So when I went in for my first meeting, they kind of tricked me into taking a meeting with them, and pretended it was a general meeting. And then I got into a meeting, and then in the middle of the meeting, Daniela Topham-Lumberg was like, Deborah Martin Chase and I are working on the Harriet story. I was like, oh, right, I did hear something like that. And you've got this somebody you're talking to. And I was kind of like, I had an attitude about it.
Okay.
And then she pulled up this photograph that newly emerged of Harriet Tubman, which we use at the end, right? And then she slapped Cynthia's picture next to it. And I was like, oh, snap. Like, that, you're serious. That was my first thought. They're serious.
What was your initial hesitation about it or about her?
Just that, you're a director. Like, as directors, we don't want talent attached. Like, don't, come to me before you talk to talent.
So she was attached.
They had been talking to her, she was kind of committed to the project.
Okay.
So that's something that as directors, we're a little bit skeptical of. Like, I would like to do all of that myself, please, thank you.
Exactly.
However, they were onto something. They were onto something. And then when I met Cynthia, a great thing happened, which was, I said, okay, let me just try and figure out your script. Let me figure out your script and what I want to say, what I would want to say if I was directing the movie. And so I dove into the research. And Cynthia was doing back-to-back movies, so I didn't meet her until I was into the research. And by the time I was into the research, I had a picture of Harriet like I could touch her hands. Like, I had a very vivid picture of her, and then Cynthia walked into the Russian tea room, and I was like, tiny, muscular, extreme sports, marathoner, singer,
She does it all. She's
Harriet. And then there's, in talking to her, there's something that in her spirit that reminded me of Harriet. She just is fierce and powerful and opinionated and strong, forceful, and like a force of nature.
And so I know when the casting was initially announced, there were some rumblings about Cynthia being British and sort of the ideas around. There's some tiny little talk, Black Twitter.
Black Twitter.
So, I guess, because I talked to her about it and we've had some conversations. I'm curious, just your general, obviously you put her in the film, but your general thoughts and ideas about what and where that was coming from and your response
honestly,
to it.
like, if we'd had that meeting and I had not felt her and didn't feel that there was Harriet there, I probably would have said, okay, here's your script. Now, let me write this, but I'm not going to direct this. But I felt she was so similar physically and had brought so much that was similar to Harriet. Even, I got to say, being West African, but the cheekbones and the voice and I didn't really know Harriet being a singer was the Harriet Tubman story. I didn't know that this stuff was integral to the Harriet Tubman story. And so once I realized, no, she has to be small, she has to be muscular, she has to be a runner, she has to be a singer, and she has to be monumentally talented. And then I'm looking at this woman and I'm going, I think this is a good idea, but I'm not going to be really, really, really sure until we go into the work. So, at night, I pray like, please, let this woman be as good as let this work. But, as we get into rehearsals and clearly we vibe, like right away we vibed. And then as we start talking about it, she's just serious, but she's as serious as they get. You don't get more serious than Cynthia Erivo.
Exactly.
So every kind of preparation that you could possibly have, physical, professional, spiritual, emotional, every preparation. She brought all of that with her. And then she was open to all of our conversations. So we looked at her and we said, okay, and I can talk like this and I can talk this way with Cynthia. Let's channel her. Let's study her face. Let's look at her mouth. Let's look at her. How did she get that pattern in her face? Where did her downturned mouth come from? How do we capture her? Where does her voice sound like? And we could, be a little, my husband would call it heebie-jeebie. Like we could be a little like spiritual about it, and she could relate on that level. Like we have to channel her and bring her, and we're going to do this together. So by the first day, when she shows up on set, and she's Harriet the first day, and she had on the hat and and I'm like, okay, it was a contract.
How much of her, and I think I'm asking this as a fellow director who is a fan, how much of her did you feel, because actors come at it in so many different ways, and some it's about, the physicality and how they dress and being that person, and some it's about kind of connecting. What did you find was your way or her sort of style or her approach to the character, and did you feel like that was something that naturally worked for you, or is that something you felt you had to sort of shape along the way?
I think that I was there to guide her through, like as directors do, to guide her through the film and push her where she needed pushing, and stay back where she needed space.
But she's very intense.
I take her very intense. To just get through the moments of the beats of the film. But she came, so that first day when she came, that's Harriet, not Minty, Harriet leading it's in the montage. That's what we shot the first day. Oh, wow. And so she's leading, this group of freedom seekers, and she ran. And as soon as I saw her run, I was like, that was like, because I'd seen Widows, and I knew I didn't want that run, right? Yeah. But, and we knew that Harriet had this femininity, and she wasn't an athletic machine in the modern sense. Mm-hmm. She was just, as Cynthia says, she's just really fast. So here's a woman that is completely of the period and completely a woman who just happens to be, because of the back-breaking labor that she's done, incredibly fast and incredibly strong. And that, to me, she just brought that authenticity. So I'd say her approach in many ways is physical. But that's totally legit, man. Like she, to physically embody a character like this is a huge thing.
Exactly. And so, even as you look at the rest of the cast, or at least the main cast, you have Leslie Odom and incredible Janelle Monáe, and all three of them, you would come from that music background. And you talked a little bit about music and how that was a part of, both the ways slaves interacted with each other, but also your storytelling. So talk to me a little bit more about music, the incredible Terrence Blanchard, who was your composer, and how you saw that playing, especially with some of these themes of action and these superhero qualities, but then also having to sort of balance that out with the person and the humanity and these personal stories as well. So what was your approach to music? Was the casting of music people and somehow a part of that, or was that just sort of a happy accident?
Okay, in terms of casting music people, they just happen to be incredibly talented actors that are so talented that they also, have Tonys and Grammys and have been on Broadway. That's the way I look at them. However, music to the story of Harriet Tubman and the story of enslaved people of that period is incredibly important. I mean, once I really realized it, because I didn't really know this story any better than most people. I thought I did, but when I really looked into it and the incredibly complex communication that was going on when people sang, and that could mean many things in a way. Yes, we're soothing each other, but we're also talking to each other. And this becomes a very sophisticated tool of resistance, and a weapon of Harriet's resistance, that she's able to call to the enslaved people, I'm here, come now. No, don't come yet. That's change of verse. No, don't come yet. It's not safe. Just in the lyrics of the songs. I mean, I'm like, this is monumental. So that was very important. For me, when I was writing the script, Hunter actually, he actually came down one day and he's like, I think your script reminds me of Sinnerman. And I started listening to Sinnerman. I was like, and there's something about the momentum of it, the driving force of it, and also the crescendo and the soulfulness. And so when I first called Terrence, I was like, I'm listening to Sinnerman, and I feel this kind of propulsion, and I kind of described it as an action film. And then I think Terrence was very blown away by the first footage he got. So whatever he had been thinking based on what I told him and script, he got much more in watching Cynthia and watching what we had done, and changed, his thought process evolved on it. But it kept, there's a sense of urgency, a sense of propulsion, a sense of rhythm, a sense of soul, and a sense of, American, like a sense of anthem and American history. And, I wanted it big and I wanted the movie big, frankly. It's not a big movie. It's not a big budget, but I wanted a big movie experience because I thought she deserved it. It's like scope and that's the sound as well. The scope and the epicness
it definitely
of the
had
story.
That kind of Copeland-like, sort of drive to it. And so as a writer, since you're a writer-director and that's the sort of first part of how you get into a story, when you were thinking about telling the story of the life of Harriet Tubman, and obviously for all of us who are writers and directors and you have to tell the stories of historical figures, how did you sort of focus on the period, the time period? Were there versions in you that you were going to tell a cradle to grave story? Were there ever, how did you sort of come to the idea that this would be how you would tell the story of Harriet's life?
There's never a cradle to grave.
Yeah.
Because I don't respond to that as well. I sometimes think you need a lens.
Yeah.
That more can be revealed by using a lens that gives you a little bit of a narrow focus. Yeah. But I definitely have more in it. I definitely had the 6-hour version. And then I had to, there were a lot of reasons why.
Yeah, how long was that first draft?
Yeah, right. There were a lot of reasons why we were not going to be able to do, but my first drafts were very, very long. A draft that I loved was a good 26 pages longer, right? And so it had much more stuff in it. So it's like, what's going to be manageable? What's going to be doable within our budget and schedule? And what's going to be the most effective storytelling? And I became very fascinated with just like telling the part that people think they know. The part any child could tell you. She escaped. She went back to liberate others. And in that escape and in that liberation is the Harriet Tubman story because it's about what you would do for freedom. Yeah. That she was willing to die for freedom and willing to die for others to be free. Mm-hmm. Like live free or die. Like everything I was trying to say, I came to realize, it was an evolution. Yeah. I came to realize that everything that I was trying to say was contained within this most dynamic, very active period of her life.
Was there anything in that 26 pages you wish
man.
ended up?
It's another movie, though,
That's
sequel.
The next one.
But definitely I was really interested in this period. Yeah, very, very interested in, like, really, can we get in and examine it? Can you get next to her when she's running back and forth, delivering people and her family? So I also concentrated on her family story. Yeah. And then I also thought that this is a fascinating decade. The decade before the Civil War is a fascinating decade in American history. There's such turmoil and uncertainty and paranoia and, all that stuff is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about the production process and sort of, I guess it was shot beautifully, and I won't ask you the budget because it looked incredible. So, but who did you work with, and how did you come about working with your DP? And was there a particular sort of visual language that you were thinking about as you were thinking about Harriet Tubman and telling that story?
Yeah, definitely. I knew I wanted to work with Warren Allen Young because we worked together on Talk to Me. He's a wonderful production designer. I knew I wanted to work with Terrence. Mm-hmm. Paul Tazewell, who's designed the costumes.
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah.
And so I had some people I wanted to work with, and then I knew I wanted this epic feeling and an epic look. I wanted it to feel much, much bigger than the budget. And so I was at Sundance. I was at the Sundance Lab. Shout out to Sundance.
Exactly.
And John Toll was an advisor with me, and Terry Shropshire was there. And Terry said, you're sitting next to John Toll. Just ask him, And I was so intimidated. He's done these huge movies. I was like, so John, what are you doing next? He said, I don't know what I'm doing next. I said, you think you want to do another big movie or like a small movie? He said, I may want to do a small movie. And I was kind of like, do you like freedom?
Exactly. Well,
how do you feel about Harriet?
I have a film.
And of course his eyes kind of glazed over and he pulled back. But I had a secret weapon, which was Michelle Satter.
Yes.
Really loves to show both Talk to Me, which is our movie, and Eve's Bayou. So that year she showed Eve's Bayou to the advisors and the fellows. Okay. So John, who hadn't seen it, saw Eve's Bayou, and so he was like. And then after that, the conversations got a little warmer, and then finally, I said, "So John, can you recommend a DP for me? For Harriet, my freedom movie that I'm in. And he said, what am I, chopped liver? I think I got time to talk. And he basically, he asked me to send him the script, and I did, and he called a week later, and he said, I really love your movie.
That's great.
But I have to think about it because I haven't worked like this in over 30 years. I got to think about how to do your movie. He said, I want to do your movie, but I don't want to fuck up your movie.
Yeah.
And then he called me back a couple of days later. And he said, I think I can do your movie. And he did it. I mean, with this, don't ask me the budget, but he did not have any of the toys. Yeah. We didn't have a Technocrane.
What focus? You didn't give Casey up?
We had a crane. We did not have a Technocrane. We did not have. I mean, it was really stripped down, but they found, and he brought his guys, and they found a way of working, and with me, and in a very simple way, which you can see is time of day. But time of day is very hard, right? You have to actually be in the place at that time of day exactly. in order to get beautiful time of day. But in a very simple way with no tricks, how do you make something epic and beautiful?
Yeah, exactly. And it looked amazing, and you can just really see the heart and soul in this film. So we're getting ready to wrap up. So just, I guess, is there anything that I didn't touch on that you wanted to maybe chat about in terms of the movie?
I don't know. It's been a very emotional movie for me, and a deeply important movie. But I've got to say, there's never been a movie that I've worked on that was easier to bring people into. Yeah. People wanted to work on Harriet. That's great. And so it's a great gift to me to have a project that people, everybody on any day, no matter how hard it was, and it was hard, knew why they were there. Everyone was there for the same reason. That's great. And that is a very beautiful experience.
That's great. So, what's keeping you busy now? What are you doing next?
So I finished my work on miniseries about Madam C.J. Walker. Yeah. I directed the first 2 of a 4-part on Madam C.J. Walker. If you don't know who she is, she was dope. Exactly. The first self-made Black female millionaire.
There we go.
Hair care product. Octavia Spencer, Blair Underwood, Tiffany Haddish, Garrett Morris, Carmen Jogo. It's dope.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah. All right, so Harriet, Madam C.J. Walker. What's next? We got to give the whole.
This. I've got to say, this is the first time in my life that I went 18 months. That I was either in production, post, or prep. Yeah. And I didn't stop. And then I went immediately into a press tour. And so I'm going to I'm a full professor at NYU grad film, and I'm teaching in the spring. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm so excited for this and all your work. And it's a crime in Hollywood that she hasn't been making films every year, but I'm glad when they come out. And so thank you for this, and much success with it. It was an important story, and you're an incredible voice. And we'll be back here for your next one, I'm sure.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned for more great Q&As with directors Ryan Johnson and Sam Mendes, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow cinephiles find the show. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.